Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast channels 98 and 22. Channel 98 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 13, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Bi-Weekly Report with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well. Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast channels 98 and 22. Channel 98 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show,
Good evening. Welcome to the kickoff meeting of the FY 2024 Budget Recommendations Committee. And this is Wednesday, July 26th, 2023. We'll be deliberating over the next several months on the preliminary town budget and make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, or the Select Board, to put it to deliberative session and a town vote in March. First order of business will be member introductions. Many of us haven't seen each other since last, let's say January, or maybe even December. Again, my name is Bob Kelly. I'm the chair of the committee. Chris Suter, to my left, is he's currently the vice chair of the committee. Chris Sigmund, to her left, is on the committee as well, and he was on the Library, Parks and Rec, and Health and Human Services subcommittee last year. I'll get to the town staff in a second. Amanda Kelly is a new recruit for the committee. Welcome, Amanda. Tan Zwan, Dr. Zwan, is with us. He worked with me on the Water and Sewer, DPW Water and Sewer subcommittee. And Andrew Elliott worked with me on the DPW General Committee. We have new members, Darden Reeves, who I actually met with recently, and he's interested in possibly working on some public works things, but he's with us for the first time, and Timothy Gwynn is a new recruit as well. So welcome to the three newbies. There are, I think, 4 other members of the committee, some of whom told me that they couldn't make it tonight, and others may be coming in later. But town staff with us this evening are Town Manager Russ Dean, Assistant Town Manager Melissa Roy, Chair of the Select Board Nico Papacasantis, and Select Board Member Nancy Belanger as well. And as always, Joanna, our erstwhile notes taker. Corey, sorry, Corey, I didn't totally forget.
Yeah.
You were sitting down, and so I couldn't see the 6'4" frame.
Oh, yeah.
Corey Stevens is our relatively new finance director. He used to be on the budget committee for a number of years. And while we sorely miss him, being in the finance director position has been a real boon for the town. So, and I think a boon for Russ and Melissa and the select board as well. So, as always, Corey, good to see you. So first order of business, official business, will be nominations and elections for the chair
Again, I'd like
the upcoming year. and to think she's been my vice chair for a number of years. We'll be voting on both the chair and the vice chair to begin with, so I'll open the meeting with a recommendation for nominations for the position of chair.
I think everybody knows where I stand. Someone else can do the nomination if they support my candidate.
I'll make a motion to return Bob to the chairman's position.
I'll second that, please.
Okay, thank you. Any other nominations for chair?
You should leave the room in case anybody wants to vote against you.
I have no problem with that. After many years, I have a thick skin. With Nico as chair of the select board, I have a thick skin. All those in favor of electing me for another term as chair signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Not opposed, okay. I will entertain nominations for the position of vice chair for the upcoming fiscal year.
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Christine Suter for vice chair.
I'll second that motion.
I feel so good about myself.
Excellent. Any other nominations for vice chair? All those in favor of Chris Suter as vice chair for FY 2024 budget season signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll save my speech for the end of the meeting.
We are humbled by your by your faith and effort. So I would like to get, Nico's got some time constraints, so I'd like to just get a couple, before we get to the town manager's report, have Nico, as the chair of the select board, say a few words about the budget process. Nico, as well, is a former chair of the committee and is intimately involved with the budget setting process for the town and has some unique insights. So Nico, if you want to grab a couple of minutes, we would appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Congratulations to you both on your reappointments,
Hard
and
fought.
welcome to the new members of the Budget Recommendations Committee. Welcome back to those returning. As Chair Kelly indicated, this is a committee that's near and dear to my heart. Served on it for many years, and the work that you're going to be doing starting in September through November is absolutely critical work. It's important work. You will be going through and vetting the draft budget as presented by the town manager. You'll also be reviewing all of the CIP items and ultimately making recommendations to the select board. The select board members will try to attend all of your meetings as spectators. We do not participate. This is your meeting. We're here as a resource if there are any questions, but it's your meeting and we'll be here to listen attentively. Because again, this work is critical. The recommendations that you bring to the board in early December will be reviewed, and I can speak, I think, for the entire select board that we do take your recommendations incredibly seriously, and we're excited for the work that you're going to be doing. And ultimately, this work is also critical to the voters prior to the March warrant. One of the things that you'll hear from Mr. Dean in September moving forward is reclassification of wages. That was a big goal and objective for the select board at the end of last year, moving into this year. Very recently, the board just approved some reclassification of wages. You'll start to see that in the department budget lines. When you do, I respectfully ask that you consider value as you consider cost, okay? The town of Exeter really hadn't reclassified wages since around 2014, 2015. It was much needed, much overdue, particularly in this market. The town needs to become more competitive to retain our employees. We have an excellent roster of employees, many of them long-term. In Public Works alone, we've had multiple openings over the course of the last couple of years. We've had the director's job opening for almost a year. We need to become more competitive. So the board feels comfortable with the recent reclassification that we can work towards becoming competitive for new hires, but most importantly, retaining the talent that we have, rewarding the talent that we have. And when I talk about value, it's a lot less expensive to retain valuable employees than it is to go out and recruit, train, and then ultimately lose in this job market. So I think that's really the big budget item that I would ask you to consider while you're going through your respective vettings. For CIP, I think that you're going to see Mr. Dean is still finalizing that. It goes before the planning board in just a couple of weeks. But I think you're going to see the public safety complex back for you to review again. I think that would probably be the biggest ticket that you'll see for CIP. We have a siphon project that you may or may not have heard about. We are very confident that August 15th will see the 60% or more of the vote. But if we don't, this project needs to get done. So you may see that if the article doesn't pass. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'm going to unapologetically use 20 seconds to say that the election is August 15th at Tuck Gym from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Absentee ballots are already available and can be handed into the clerk's office up until August 14th, Monday night, and by mail August 15th. So with that, again, thank you all, and we're excited for the new budget season.
Nico, quick question. You said it was 2014, 2015 that the last time the wages were reviewed or
Not in terms of
How would
like,
you-
just
how would you
just in
explain
terms of
that?
like classification, not raises or merit increases
No,
or that
but
much,
like-
but just for the entirety, I believe it was 2014, 2015. Mr. Dean, do you have that?
Right, so our classification and compensation plan, which is a listing of all of our positions, essentially was updated for the first time since 2014. So with that, was adopted a new wage grid to go with that.
Yeah.
We have had increases in employee wages over the past several years, but this is the first time we took a fresh look at going outside, looking at comparable communities and comparing them to ourselves, and then upping the wages appropriately where it was warranted.
Yeah. I think
And
that-
this was for non-union employees.
Right, and I asked that because I think that's really important to like clarify like what that means. And again, the last time it happened, which we're looking at, what, 8 years now since that, you know. Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other questions?
Well, you brought up an interesting point, which I'm sure we'll dig into. These, when you're talking about reclassification and wages, you're talking about a non-union.
That is correct.
Which is, of course, many employees are union, and those are negotiated with their contracts.
Correct.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. Thank you,
Great,
Mr. Chair.
thanks for your time.
Thank you.
So the general approach that we have, before we get to Russ's comments, there are two components to the budget process. One is the general operations budgets, and we'll be getting a thick notebook of the various budgets for water and sewer, public works, general government, health and human services. Every division in town will be outlined, the budget. And the way the town puts it together is we see sort of the last couple of years, what was put forward, what was voted on, and then what the requests are for the next fiscal year. So you get a pretty decent snapshot over the last few years of what has been requested and approved, and then what things might look like going forward that we would review. And then there'll be another section that actually goes back further than that, another 4 or 5 years, just in general terms. So if you go through this, and again, feel free to reach out to me or any other committee member who may be here a while, if you would like some guidance. You know, again, we'd love to have everybody hit the ground running in September. So if there are any questions once the budgets become available, feel free to ask. But basically every down to every last paper clip, which has been debated in the past.
By the way, where did this paper come from? That's what I want to know for this.
I think Chris recycled. I think she recycled that. But so
math paper.
there'll be the budget component, the operations budget. In addition to that, there'll be another booklet that you receive that's the Capital Improvements Program, or CIP, you'll hear it referred to. And that basically describes capital projects and vehicles that the town is considering or has considered for the past several years, as well as going forward. So this will give you a good sense of the various mixes of operations versus projects that the town is contemplating. And one of the issues that we always wrestle with is that we spend probably 80% to 90% of our time talking about the operations budgets, and then basically one meeting about the projects, and vehicles. So what we try to do is integrate, with each subcommittee for the various departments to sort of give us a lay of the land on what they're thinking about on the CIP, so that people can start to muse on that over the next few weeks, let's say in October. And then when we get into November and actually review the CIP, there shouldn't be any surprises, hopefully. So that's the general approach. We don't set, I know some of my predecessors years ago would set targets for budget percentages and things like that. At least the last 3 chairmen that I see in my view have abstained or have totally gotten away from that. The budget is what it is. We review every line and every department. And if it's something that this committee thinks is worthwhile, then it goes in. And if it's really what we're trying to do is optimize the quality of life in this town for a reasonable cost. So we don't try to hit targets on a percentage basis. We look and see what is a worthwhile request, and does it fit into the current current budget and current tax structure that we have. So with that, I'd like to segue to Rustin, our town manager, and he'll recap. He put together some summaries. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to pick them up, but summaries of what happened in the voting in March as far as warrant articles, and then where we are with the FY23 budget to date, and just some observations thereof. So Russ, if you would.
Thanks, Bob. One of the things that we try to do with our budget each year is maintain a stable tax rate. So that's, obviously the tax rate is something that is on everybody's mind, and when we go through our budget, we're very meticulous in keeping that in mind and putting our budgets together. Exeter, as you all know, you live here, is a full-service community. We've got many functions and programs that we provide through our town government, including police and fire, and public works, water, sewer, and so forth. And that's not to short any other service that we provide, including things like the library and parks and recreation, and general government. So we have a robust budget process. Bob alluded to it. The committee gets deep into the line items and does a lot of debating about that, and we appreciate that. For the new members that are here, I wanted to point out, just so you know, we operate under SB2. That's the form of government we have, where we have an operating budget, and if the operating budget does not pass, we go to a default budget. I will tell you, in 18 budgets that I've been working on in my career here, we have gone to a default budget one time. So in that instance, the default budget was actually higher in the general fund than the regular operating budget. So I guess that didn't.
Which people didn't realize when they were voting.
Really do much damage to the situation. So just a little bit about what's happening today. Our budget has reached the point of, our general fund budget has reached the point of, it's now $21.2 million. Our water fund is $4.5 million, and our sewer fund is $7.4 million. We've had a lot of success at the ballot. Our budgets were passed this past year robustly with 70% plus approval by the voters. So I think that shows that we're responsible when we're putting our budgets together. The town values, I will tell you that currently they're laying at 60% of assessment. The assessment ratio is 60% of value. So that essentially means that next year, if we go through a revaluation process, we could see property values increase on the order of magnitude 30%. So 30% to even 40%, and maybe even more in some instances.
Right.
So that's something to keep in mind. And we can talk about the relationship between value and budget and tax rates as we go through the process. The town share of the tax rate is approximately 23%. So it's, I don't want to call it a sliver of the tax bill, but if you pay your tax bill, you should know that 77% of your tax bill goes to other sources, and only 23% goes to the town. So it's, the lion's share goes to the schools and the county, with the lion's share going to the schools. And then the capital improvement plan, it was alluded to earlier, that's a very important plan of our capital projects. It's a 6-year planning horizon, and those public hearings are in front of the planning board in August and September. And the Budget Recommendations Committee will get copies of the capital improvement plan, and you'll be able to review those as part of the budget process. And as was pointed out, it's a very important part of that process. So we look forward to that. Budget factors in FY24. We have a few large projects that are on the horizon or right in front of us. One is the police station fire substation project. That was something that was on the ballot in March. It barely did not pass. It needed 45 more votes to pass. It got 57% in favor. It needed 60%. So the supermajority wasn't achieved on that, but we feel like it's a good project and it needs to be back in front of the voters. So we'll be having that conversation going forward. The surface water treatment plant, we just learned actually today that we received SRF approval for that project, State Revolving Fund. That will give us 20% debt forgiveness on $2.5 million. So that is something to definitely consider as part of our FY24 budget process.
What's the limitations on that, time-wise? Do we have to make a decision in a certain time period?
I think it would go back on the list if we didn't make a decision, but it would put us
in this year? This fiscal year?
In this fiscal year?
Or in for next fiscal year?
Yeah. So So,
More information to come on that, but
Right.
something to keep in the background.
Because we're not really at a point to even know what that is going to be, that facility. I mean, there's,
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the money to go through that process, knowing that it's needed, and we've had the discussion on what the timeline is, but we just got that information today. So
that's,
it doesn't
I mean, it's
mean
good
we have-
news.
It is good news, yep.
yeah, we do have a $28.4 million placeholder in the CIP for a surface water treatment plant, so that gives you a cost order of magnitude that we're thinking about for the construction of the new plant itself.
Right.
That's a couple of years out. So some other notes, the DPW facility planning process is going well. We just went under contract with Weston and Sampson to do that work. They are working on that as we speak, and so we should have, that was a $50,000 warrant article, if you remember, in the 23 town ballot. So they're under contract and beginning that work. Some notes on interest rates, just to let the committee know that interest rates are climbing. We know that. The Fed raised rates again today. We just went out to bond. Corey will talk a little bit more about this when we get to his section. But the interest rates used to be mainly in the 2% range, primarily in our current project listing, and they're now going to 3% and above. So 3.5, depending upon the length of the borrowing. We're seeing interest rates tick up. And then as the chair alluded to earlier, the wage classification plan update, that's been a big addition to the budget, a big addition to our human resources investment that we're making in people. Recruitment and retention is a huge issue right now. I have not seen a labor market like this in my career, and it's something that we needed to address. And I want to acknowledge and thank the committee for allowing us to have the $100,000 last year that went into the budget this year, for this year's budget, to be able to be used for those classification updates, because it did make a difference. And we appreciate that. So as the chair alluded to, we'll be building those costs into the budget for this coming year, and you'll see those as part of your deliberations when you see the department budgets. In addition to that, I also wanted to point out that we did some other wage adjustments across the board with our employee groups. In Public Works, we added 2 steps to their step scale, which would give them an additional 5% increase. At the top step of their wage scale, we also added another 5%. So if you were a top stepper, you got 5%, just like the others in the group did. So we're trying to be competitive, and we're trying to do things that will keep us competitive with other communities, but it is harder and harder to keep up these days. We are seeing, just a quick example I'll throw out, we lost a police officer to Fremont, the town of Fremont, which, you think about
Fraction of
Exeter
our size.
versus Fremont, it's not usually a fair match, but they bought out the contract of one of our police officers here to the tune of $16,000. So that officer, went over to Fremont, and there was really nothing we could do about it. So we made strides with both police and fire. We offered them $2,000 retention bonuses, which were approved by the board. We are also building those into the FY24 financial schematic as well. So we hope that those kinds of changes will help keep our workforce competitive wage-wise. And we're going to continue to work on that. And we will have another proposal for a July 2024 wage increase. And what we're thinking about right now is order of magnitude 5% at this point. So that is that. So that's a good overview of the budget. Any questions so far?
Oh, I've got a few.
Okay. I'll go through the chair.
Do you have a sense of, you guys usually make the budgets available by mid-September or so, typically? Is that still the
Third week in
Third week.
September.
So just like a week or so before our meeting?
Yeah, so the plan this year would be to have the select board receive the budget on the 25th, the preliminary budget.
Got it.
And then the committee would get it on the 27th.
Okay. Did you have any questions?
Yeah, just a couple of quick ones. But anybody else or no?
No? Go for it.
Thanks, Russ. Assessment values, I did them in order. Assessment values at 60%.
67.
Is that what you said?
I said 60. 67 was the number. I got a revised number from the assessor today.
67?
Of 60%.
Sorry?
I got a revised number from the assessor just today of 60%.
60.
60% of market.
Which means, and it needs to be much higher than that by state regulations and the like, correct?
Correct. It needs to be between 90 and 110%.
90 and 110.
Right.
And I'm sure it just seems like yesterday, like that we rejiggered all this stuff, but I guess it's.
We did. It was
2019, we had the revaluation.
Unbelievable.
Well, I think what the market's done
Well,
since
no,
2019.
2019. Next question. This SRF for the surface water treatment plant, was this was in the pipeline or just an opportunity that came along or what?
It was, we worked with our consultants to put together a list of projects that we would put in for, knowing that debt forgiveness could be part of the equation, plus a lower interest rate going through the state revolving fund. So that's why we applied.
Got it. Just kind of comes out of left field. It's a nice.
Well, it's always been in the CIP. We've been focusing on groundwater the last couple of years, and we will continue to focus on that. But, when money's available, you have to sort of sit up and pay attention. So we'll deal with it accordingly.
And the next bullet was, well, there was a few I'll skip over, but 100K for reclassification. We're talking about the budget process last year, and the BRC dedicated some money basically to say, hey, we got to look at wages, right? Are you saying that was that money spent on wages or was that money spent on studies?
No, it was spent on wages.
Okay.
Yeah, we used ARPA funds to do the actual study.
So you were actually in a position to supplement some wages and sprinkle that money where it was necessary?
Correct.
Great. Wonderful. And these wage tiers that you alluded to right after that, are they ones that are planned or are they ones that were implemented?
Well, I'm sorry, which wage?
You said you added a couple of tiers or adjusted some tiers.
Oh, so in the Public Works group, we adjusted their step plan.
Yeah.
So we basically moved employees up 2 steps in the plan.
Got it.
Prior to when they would normally be moved.
And you were able to implement that during this cycle?
Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Russ.
You're welcome.
Corey, do you want to add anything to the budget discussion there?
Sure.
Or wait until September, whatever your pleasure is.
Whatever your pleasure.
No, if you have some comments that you'd like to add on to Russ's, that would be great.
So I handed out, well, evening, everybody.
Who's that?
I don't know. He's sitting down. I have no idea.
And Judy arrived. Should we tell Judy that she was elected chair?
Yeah, excuse me for just a second. So Judy Rowan is a longtime member of the committee. She unfortunately didn't get my email about the 6:30 start, but that's all right. That's all right. Yeah. But Judy is an integral part of this committee, has been the Police and Fire Subcommittee chair for many years, and has been a great conduit between those departments and this committee. So I'm glad you could make it. Okay, Corey, sorry.
Let's see. So I handed out the year-to-date through 6/30 results for the general fund and water and sewer funds. It's a multi-page, double-sided. I'd say the general theme is we're kind of on track with what things looked like last year. So for our $21,287,000 general fund budget, we're $9.5 million spent, about 45% at this point. That was consistent with last year's spending. A couple areas we're monitoring. Snow and ice is already over budget, and we have a snow and ice deficit fund that we tap in those years when we go over. Some of it's plowing, some of it's cost of salt to us. Same sort of story as last year. And then we're looking at our contract services. When you don't have people on the force, you hire contracted services, and we find ourselves in that position, particularly in DPW. So we're watching that line closely as well. Some positive notes, we've been able to leverage the interest rates we see out in the market that we can take advantage of with minimal risk to our dollars. And our interest income is 80,000 over our budget for the year so far, 6 months in. So that's a good trend line for us. Also, our building permits with the likes of the Sylvania property, some of the work that PEA is doing, that's about 50,000 in excess of budget for the year. So off to a good start in those two lines. Water fund, $4.5 million budget. We are 2.36 million spent, or 52%. That is about 10% higher than last year. We did our capital outlay a little bit sooner this year, so spending is more in line with about half the year through. Sewer fund budget of $7.432 million, 1.46 million spent, which is 20%. For those of you who are new on the budget, we have a very large debt service payment that happens in December. So the lion's share of our spending happens then. So 20% spend rate is about what we had last year. I think we were 18% at this time. We are anticipating the state aid grant that we received last year to the tune of 1.08 million. Last year it was 1.39 million, sorry. And that goes towards our wastewater treatment facility. Over an 18-year period, we have a grant from the state to go towards our debt service for that facility, which is in the neighborhood of $50 million. That's about it. As Russ alluded to, borrowing costs have ticked up. We just finalized our bond agreements this week for $9.2 million, where we were getting 2.5 million last year. I'm sorry, 2.5% last year. This year, I think we're at 3.6. So a bit of an elevation in the interest rate we're getting.
I don't want to belabor this too much, but I was sort of intrigued on the water and the sewer funds. Usually the capital outlay gets sort of delayed till the end of the year when there's no money left in any of the other lines, and that becomes sort of the default for getting things done.
Yeah.
But I see where the water fund, they're healthily clicking along at 95% expended already.
Yeah, and last year at this time they hadn't spent any. Steve had identified,
Right.
Steve Dalton, the project he needed to get into, and that just happened soon.
Do you know what the specifics are of that? I don't have my list of what was in that.
I don't either. At the time, I think I remember, but it's a few months now, yeah.
No?
Do you happen to know?
I think it's the clarifier project at the surface water treatment.
It is, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which has been sort of lingering for a year and a half, so that's good that got started. Excellent. Thank you, Melissa. And thank you, Corey, for adding to Russ's report. So just hopefully a really brief discussion on the process for this year. Thank you, Nico. Thanks, Bob. I've sent along via email, I think to everybody, a preliminary list of the members, which I will update since Amanda was just approved on Monday, so I will update the list with all the contact information so that if people have questions, they can email each other back and forth, and certainly feel free to do that. I also sent along the meeting dates that we had agreed to, so hopefully everyone got that. Just sort of a summary for the new folks. I've explained this to some of you, but so we meet again at the end of September 27th. It's a Wednesday. We generally try to meet on Wednesdays at 6:30. And that will be, the financial kickoff. This is the administrative kickoff meeting. Russ will actually have the budget. He will spend, half hour or so, going into some of the minutia of some of the requests and some of his, potential deferments and the reasoning behind that. And basically a very detailed description of the budget presentation, including CIP requests and what the warrant might look like for 2024. So that will happen again on the 27th. And then we will, sort of break up into subcommittees, which I'll get to in a minute on what those are, for the next month or so. And then in October, we start getting together for each individual department, police and fire, water and sewer, public works, health and human services, et cetera. And the chair of those subcommittees will then present, that budget, and then we as a larger committee will debate the report by the subcommittee as to whether we agree, disagree, want to make changes, or get clarifications, that sort of thing. It's a fairly simple process. We highly recommend that if you have a question, ask it. There are no bad questions. We really want everyone on the committee, and by extension, through the video feed, the taxpayers and ratepayers to be educated about the budget process. So if there are questions that you might have, then you can probably be sure that the general public has similar questions. So feel free to ask those types of questions, and in general, that usually elicits a nice debate or discussion about the details of those questions. So it's all good and all part of a general education of the voting public.
Quick question.
Sure, Chris.
You're talking about meetings. I already know I'm out of town on the 27th. Or I'll be coming into town, but I'll be out of my mind tired. So is there ways that are we going to be able to join in, or at least listen in, or something?
I think Zoom protocols have sort of expired, but I don't know.
We can arrange a Zoom if that's.
Yeah, she's getting in really late the night before from overseas travel, right?
Yeah, actually come back on the 27th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, never mind. I don't even land. We don't land till like 10 o'clock at night. See, I'm already
we'll be halfway
jet
done.
lag, and
So we'll be halfway done with the meeting at 10 o'clock.
Gosh, don't tell me.
The Zoom option is available if you want to.
All right, I guess I'll just
You do it on your phone.
on the plane.
On the plane.
Just stream it, yeah.
So there's a meeting in the middle or early part of October for general government. It's an all-day affair, starts at 8:30, I think, would be in this room. Hopefully your job will allow you to take at least the morning off. We've been fairly efficient the last couple of years and been done, just after lunch. The town does provide sandwiches for us, which is nice. So it's a nice little communal effort. We go through all of the general government, basically everything that's in town hall, a lot of the administrative functions for the town. And we, Anna Grazer, who's not here this evening, is the chair of that subcommittee. And Nancy Belanger is the former chair, and they've got it really dialed in. So it goes fairly quickly, but it is an all-day, at least 2/3 of a day event. So hopefully you'll be able to find that time to join us. And then the other meetings are, as shown in the schedule, throughout the next 4 to 5 weeks. Will be generally at 6:30 in this room. There are three basic meeting components. One is the overall budget, this committee here, as we just articulated. Then there are subcommittees for each of the departments. I'm sort of assuming that the folks who were chairs last year will want to remain in that position, hopefully. So we don't have a need for any any oversight for any of the committees. However, there are some openings as in the membership list that I sent around. I put there are some openings for the new folks. By my count, because Kathy Corson was on your committee last year, Judy, so basically Judy is the lone soldier this year so far for police and fire. So if either of you, or if anybody actually in the committee, but if any of the new folks have an interest in working with Judy on the police and fire budgets, the budgets themselves are fairly simple. The CIP sometimes, and this year, as Russ articulated, will be looking at the public safety complex again and the details of that. So it will be a very interesting research effort. So that's available. General government, working with Anna on that would also be available for anyone who might be interested in that. And then public works, each of the two committees for that, the water and sewer, and the general, each have 2 people on them, but one of the 2 people is me in both cases. So it'd be nice to have somebody assisting, make it a 3. They're fairly complicated budgets, and a lot of discussion with the departments, and going back and forth with the subcommittee members on coming up with a final preliminary budget. So those are the 3. You can sort of mull that over. You certainly don't have to answer tonight. You can get back to me with a one-on-one email if you'd like. Ask questions about either of them. But again, police, fire, general government, and either of the public works subcommittees would be available for either of the 3 of you to volunteer for. So, and again, if you have any questions on the details of those, feel free to ask me. And again, so subcommittee meetings are scheduled between the various subcommittee members, led by the chair, generally off the grid. They are posted, so reminder to all of the chairs that they have to be run through Pam McElroy on the dates and everything, so that they can be posted. And minutes should also be kept as well. On the CIP component, that is the last meeting that we have. That'll be in mid-November. Again, it's generally a fairly long night, maybe 3 to 4 hours, because we sometimes go through as many as, half a dozen to 10 vehicles that various departments have requested, as well as various projects. There can be, well, as you can see the list here, there were 32, articles on the warrant from this past year, and many of those are CIP items with money attached to them that we discussed. So it's a long night, but that is the last night, and, as I try to reiterate every year to people, the CIP has as much to do with what the tax rate is as anything operationally, because we could add potentially, several tens of millions of dollars onto the budget, through, fire trucks and facilities and things like that. All of it would be debt, not necessarily one-to-one expenses, but it's a very important discussion. So hopefully you can clear your calendars over the next, from the end of September to mid-November, according to the schedule, and make as many meetings as you can.
I see.
Chris?
I'm so talkative tonight. Well, I'm thinking because we have 3 new people too. But because when you're trying to decide what committee you want to be on, I think it would be a good idea to think about your schedule and your free time, and talk to that committee chair, and kind of get an idea of what's, because some committees take more time than others, and all the meetings when we meet with staff have to be during the work day, because that's when they work. We don't meet with staff at night. So as you think about your personal schedule and your work schedule, if you work, that's good to talk to the committee chair about what to expect, so that you also helps you with the right fit.
And again, on the list, I had a partial list of the email and phone information if people felt compelled to share that. I will update this and send it out tomorrow. And as Chris alluded to, definitely feel free if you have a question, either with a specific subcommittee or with either of us as chair and vice chair. If you have any questions, there are no bad questions, so feel free to follow through. Anything else from you guys? Nance, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Just thanking everyone for doing this again this year, and to the new people. Thank you.
Anything, Melissa, on your end? You're good?
Thank you.
Okay, so that's all I have. Anybody have any general questions to ask?
We did hand out, Bob, just before you get to that, we handed out 2 sheets. One was the Exeter Town budget data looking at the last 3 years, so you can see the average annual increase in the budgets. So that's just a data point that you can look at and absorb. I will say the general fund average annual increase in the last 3 years is 2.79%. So in my estimation, a pretty lean 3 years if you look at it, especially given where inflation has been and is right now. And then the second sheet is a sheet that we put together called Public Tax Rates, 2020 to 2022, which is a really interesting sheet. If you're into numbers and you want to look at comparable communities, and what this shows is their valuation, their overall net taxable valuation is called, the local tax rate for the town or city, and then the actual city-town levy for the town or city share of the budget. So you can see where Exeter falls relative to some of our comparable communities. And, in some instances, it's pretty dramatic, the difference. If you look at, for example, just picking out Portsmouth, 49 million just on the city side for a levy versus Exeter's 13.3. We kind of think of ourselves as maybe a little bit comparable to Portsmouth, but in terms of this data point, it's really not
even close.
It's not comparable. So
I'm sorry, Russ, I zoned out for a second. What do you mean by levy?
Yeah.
the amount of money taxed.
The amount of money taxed?
Yes.
What does that mean?
So the total amount.
Thank you again.
The total amount of the tax levy for municipal services.
So that reflects the percentage that we get, that we'll keep from the total amount of taxation after the portions have gone to schools in the county.
Correct.
Okay.
That's exactly right. So it is an interesting thing to look at some of our neighbors and see what their valuation bases are like compared to Exeter, whereas Exeter is thought of as a fairly affluent community in a lot of ways. And from a valuation perspective, one of the things that we always need to keep in mind is that our top 3 taxpayers all have a not-for-profit, non-taxable component to their operation, so it does impact the overall assessed valuation of the town. Now, again, like we talked about earlier, at 60% of value, of market value, we're going to see a jump in the coming year, in 2024. But it's still, again, it's still a good exercise to look at this and look at another town like Hampton as an example. Even Hanover is higher than Exeter in terms of assessed valuation. So it is just some interesting data points to look at.
Russ, sorry.
You want to say something?
Do you have any knowledge on, of these towns that are listed here, when they've had their last revision and assessment?
Who has?
Of the towns that are listed here, do we have any insight as to which of those towns? I mean, we have not really changed our assessment since 2019.
2019.
And these other towns, are they in the same bucket, or it's all over the map kind of thing?
I think it's going to vary from town to town. Some may have updated, and others may be in the same boat we are in. So
I think they also try to stay within the 5-year
they have to.
period.
Yeah, that's a requirement by law.
From 1 to 5, generally. Andrew, I'm sorry.
I'm just still lost on what the town levy is. It says it's 13 million on this page, but then the 2022 general fund was 20 million. So how are those different?
So if you-
I'm still lost.
Absolutely.
So if we need 20 million,
Yeah.
some of it's going to come from folks who go downstairs and register their vehicles, or
Okay.
some are going to come from building permits. So there's other revenue sources beyond what we need to tax residents. What we need to tax residents is the 13 million.
Okay. And and that's, as Chris said, the leftover after the school piece.
Skills county and all that, yeah.
Right.
Yes. Plus, every year we do use a portion of our prior year budget surplus to reduce our share of the tax rate.
What was it?
Every year we use a certain percentage of our budget surplus from the prior year to lower the tax rate. And that gets applied in the fall when the new tax rate is set.
So if we have a fund balance in the general fund, the town manager and the finance director and the select board will figure out what we can afford to sort of work back to the taxpayers to keep the tax rate stable. Generally around 500,000 to 600,000, right?
Yeah,
generally.
it's been actually more like 8.
Yeah, the last couple of years.
In
It's been a
recent
lot
years
higher.
and $1 million in the past year.
800,000 recently, but prior to that, on the average, it was at least well over $500,000 that was put back to the taxpayers.
I will tell you, though, just keep in mind as we go through this process with our executive team here, we've been talking in great detail about the fund balance because we just had a settlement with Riverwoods on a valuation issue that will have a negative impact on our fund balance. So even though it's been strong, which is a great thing, and we want it to be strong for the town's financial statements, that did happen, and so we have to keep that in mind going forward.
Great. Andrew?
Not so good.
You had a question a while ago. Do you still have it? You do not.
No, that's all right, Bob. That's fine, thank you.
Hopefully it got answered.
Your last
I
summer?
have one more question. Isn't there also like another town money thing that's like I don't know what the word for it is. Isn't there like a savings account or something?
You're talking about the fund balance?
That's the fund balance.
Fund balance.
Because there's water and
is the
sewer
leftover-
reserves, which
Yeah,
are
there's not
similar.
like a trust
but
fund or like other money. It's like what's all the money the town has?
So there are other funds. There are capital reserve funds. Those fall under the trustees of trust funds with the select board named as agents of the funds. We have those. We also have a recreation revolving fund, so we take in fees and we pay out on recreation activities. We have an ambulance EMS revolving fund. Again, we take in ambulance fees and we pay out budget for ambulance based on the fees that we bring in. And we have a cable TV fund. So we bring in franchise fees to that cable TV fund and we expend out of it for EXTV purposes. So you don't see, those are known as non-appropriated funds. Town meeting does not appropriate that money, but they are accounted for, and Corey includes those in the select board's financial report that they get every quarter.
Just want to see the whole picture.
Did you have something,
It's so
Tom?
confusing.
Okay. That's all I have for this evening. And if there are no follow-up questions, we'll see everyone on September 27th. It's 6:30 here. And again, if you three could give me some feedback on what subcommittees you might like to be on, we can start a dialogue in that way, and then we can, because whoever wants to be on general government, Anna usually likes to get going in advance of the budget because she's got to interview, a dozen or 15, different, department heads in town hall. So she, if one of you would like to help her, that might get going a little bit before September 27th. So, but other than that, Nancy.
One more thing I should
Sure.
have mentioned. If anyone's interested in watching the planning board meeting on Thursday night, the 10th at 6:30, that's the preliminary introduction of the CIP.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Okay?
This
Thank
Thursday,
you.
tomorrow?
No, Thursday the
August.
10th.
The
August
10th of August.
Starts at 6:30.
Thanks, Nancy.
That's a good point.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, I'll convene the meeting until September 27th. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast channels 98 and 22.